Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States, and my fellow Americans. We meet tonight at a moment of unlimited potential. As we begin a new Congress, I stand here ready to work with you to achieve historic breakthroughs for all Americans. Millions of our fellow citizens are watching us now gathered in this great chamber, hoping that we will govern not as two parties, but as one nation. The agenda I will lay out this evening is not a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda. It's the agenda of the American people. Many of us have campaigned on the same core promises: to defend American jobs and demand fair trade for American workers, to rebuild and revitalize our nation's infrastructure, to reduce the price of health care and prescription drugs, to create an immigration system that is safe, lawful, modern, and secure, and to pursue a foreign policy that puts America's interest first. There is a new opportunity in American politics if only we have the courage together to seize it. Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. This year, America will recognize two important anniversaries that show us the majesty of America's mission and the power of American pride. In June, we mark 75 years since the start of what General Dwight D. Eisenhower called the Great Crusade, the Allied liberation of Europe in World War II. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky, and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea to save our civilization from tyranny. Here with us tonight are three of those incredible heroes: Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchik. Please. gentlemen, we salute you. In 2019, we also celebrate 50 years since brave young pilots flew 250,000 miles through space to plant the American flag on the face of the moon. Half a century later, we are joined by one of the Apollo 11 astronauts who planted that flag, Buzz Aldrin. Thank you, Buzz. This year, American astronauts will go back to space on American rockets. In the 20th century, America saved freedom, transformed science, redefined the middle class, and when you get down to it, there's nothing anywhere in the world that can compete with America. Now we must step boldly and bravely into the next chapter of this great American adventure. And we must create a new standard of living for the 21st century. An amazing quality of life for all of our citizens is within reach. We can make our communities safer, our families stronger, our culture richer, our faith deeper, and our middle class bigger and more prosperous than ever before. But we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good. Together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make. We must choose between greatness or gridlock, results or resistance, vision or vengeance, incredible progress or pointless destruction. Tonight, I ask you to choose greatness. Over the last 2 years, my administration has moved with urgency and historic speed to confront problems neglected by leaders of both parties over many decades. In just over 2 years since the election, we have launched an unprecedented economic boom, a boom that has rarely been seen before. There's been nothing like it. We have created We have created 5.3 million new jobs and, importantly, added 600,000 new manufacturing jobs, something which almost everyone said was impossible to do. But the fact is, we are just getting started. Wages are rising at the fastest pace in decades and growing for blue-collar workers, who I promised to fight for. They're growing faster than anyone else thought possible. Nearly 5 million Americans have been lifted off food stamps. The U.S. economy is growing almost twice as fast today as when I took office. And we are considered far and away the hottest economy anywhere in the world, not even close. Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century. African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. Unemployment for Americans with disabilities has also reached an all-time low. More people are working now than at any time in the history of our country. 157 million people at work. We passed a massive tax cut for working families and doubled the child tax credit. We virtually ended the estate tax, or death tax, as it is often called, on small businesses, for ranches, and also for family farms. We eliminated the very unpopular Obamacare individual mandate penalty. And to give critically ill patients access to life-saving cures, we passed, very importantly, right to try. My administration has cut more regulations in a short period of time than any other administration during its entire tenure. Companies are coming back to our country in large numbers, thanks to our historic reductions in taxes and regulations. And we have unleashed a revolution in American energy. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world. And now, for the first time in 65 years, we are a net exporter of energy. After 24 months of rapid progress, our economy is the envy of the world. Our military is the most powerful on earth by far. And America America is again winning each and every day. Members of Congress, the state of our union is strong. That sounds so good. Our country is vibrant, and our economy is thriving like never before. On Friday, it was announced that we added another 304,000 jobs last month alone, almost double the number expected. An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way. We must be united at home to defeat our adversaries abroad. This new era of cooperation can start with finally confirming the more than 300 highly qualified nominees who are still stuck in the Senate, in some cases years and years waiting. Not right. The Senate has failed to act on these nominations, which is unfair to the nominees and very unfair to our country. Now is the time for bipartisan action. Believe it or not, we have already proven that that's possible. In the last Congress, both parties came together to pass unprecedented legislation to confront the opioid crisis, a sweeping new farm bill, historic VA reforms, and after 4 decades of rejection, we passed VA accountability so that we can finally terminate those who mistreat our wonderful veterans. And just weeks ago, both parties united for groundbreaking criminal justice reform. They said it couldn't be done. Last year, I heard through friends the story of Alice Johnson. I was deeply moved. In 1997, Alice was sentenced to life in prison as a first-time nonviolent drug offender. Over the next 22 years, she became a prison minister, inspiring others to choose a better path. She had a big impact on that prison population and far beyond. Alice's story underscores the disparities and unfairness that can exist in criminal sentencing and the need to remedy this total injustice. She served almost that 22 years and had expected to be in prison for the remainder of her life. In June, I commuted Alice's sentence. When I saw Alice's beautiful family greet her at the prison gates, hugging and kissing and crying and laughing, I knew I did something right. Alice is with us tonight, and she is a terrific woman. Terrific. Alice, please. Alice, thank you for reminding us that we always have the power to shape our own destiny. Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you very much. Inspired by stories like Alice's, my administration worked closely with members of both parties to sign the First Step Act into law. Big deal. It's a big deal. This legislation reformed sentencing laws that have wrongly and disproportionately harmed the African American community. The First Step Act gives nonviolent offenders the chance to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. Now, states across the country are following our lead. America is a nation that believes in redemption. We are also joined tonight by Matthew Charles from Tennessee. In 1996, at the age of 30, Matthew was sentenced to 35 years for selling drugs and related offenses. Over the next 2 decades, he completed more than 30 Bible studies, became a law clerk, and mentored many of his fellow inmates. Now Matthew is the very first person to be released from prison under the First Step Act. Matthew, please. Thank you, Matthew. Welcome home. Now, Republicans and Democrats must join forces again to confront an urgent national crisis. Congress has 10 days left to pass a bill that will fund our government, protect our homeland, and secure our very dangerous southern border. Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business. As we speak, large, organized caravans are on the march to the United States. We have just heard that Mexican cities, in order to remove the illegal immigrants from their communities, are getting trucks and buses to bring them up to our country in areas where there is little border protection. I have ordered another 3,750 troops to our southern border to prepare for this tremendous onslaught. This is a moral issue. The lawless state of our southern border is a threat to the safety, security, and financial well-being of all America. We have a moral duty to create an immigration system that protects the lives and jobs of our citizens. This includes our obligation to the millions of immigrants living here today who followed the rules and respected our laws. Legal immigrants enrich our nation and strengthen our society in countless ways. I want people to come into our country in the largest numbers ever, but they have to come in legally. Tonight, I am asking you to defend our very dangerous southern border out of love and devotion to our fellow citizens and to our country. No issue better illustrates the divide between America's working class and America's political class than illegal immigration. Wealthy politicians and donors push for open borders while living their lives behind walls and gates and guards. Meanwhile, working-class Americans are left to pay the price for mass illegal immigration. Reduced jobs, lower wages, overburdened schools, hospitals that are so crowded you can't get in, increased crime, and a depleted social safety net. Tolerance for illegal immigration is not compassionate. It is actually very cruel. One in 3 women is sexually assaulted on the long journey north. Smugglers use migrant children as human pawns to exploit our laws and gain access to our country. Human traffickers and sex traffickers take advantage of the wide open areas between our ports of entry to smuggle thousands of young girls and women into the United States and to sell them into prostitution and modern-day slavery. Tens of thousands of innocent Americans are killed by lethal drugs that cross our border and flood into our cities, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. The savage gang, MS-13, now operates in at least 20 different American states, and they almost all come through our southern border. Just yesterday, an MS-13 gang member was taken into custody for a fatal shooting on a subway platform in New York City. We are removing these gang members by the thousands, but until we secure our border, they're going to keep streaming right back in. Year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal, illegal aliens. I've gotten to know many wonderful angel moms and dads and families. No one should ever have to suffer the horrible heartache that they have had to endure. Here tonight is Deborah Bissell. Just 3 weeks ago, Deborah's parents, Gerald and Sharon, were burglarized and shot to death in their Reno, Nevada home by an illegal alien. They were in their 80s and are survived by 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. Also here tonight are Gerald and Sharon's granddaughter, Heather, and great-granddaughter, Madison. To Deborah, Heather, Madison, please stand. Few can understand your pain. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much. I will never forget, and I will fight for the memory of Gerald and Sharon, that it should never happen again. Not one more American life should be lost because our nation failed to control its very dangerous border. In the last 2 years, our brave ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of criminal aliens, including those charged or convicted of nearly 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 killings or murders. We are joined tonight by one of those law enforcement heroes, ICE Special Agent Elvin Hernandez. When Elvin Thank you. When Elvin was a boy, he and his family legally immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic. At the age of 8, Elvin told his dad he wanted to become a special agent. Today, he leads investigations into the scourge of international sex trafficking. Elvin says that if I can make sure these young girls get their justice, I've really done my job. Thanks to his work and that of his incredible colleagues, more than 300 women and girls have been rescued from the horror of this terrible situation, and more than 1,500 sadistic traffickers have been put behind bars. Thank you, Alvin. We will always support the brave men and women of law enforcement, and I pledge to you tonight that I will never abolish our heroes from ICE. Thank you. My administration has sent to Congress a common-sense proposal to end the crisis on the southern border. It includes humanitarian assistance, more law enforcement, drug detection at our ports, closing loopholes that enable child smuggling, and plans for a new physical barrier or wall to secure the vast areas between our ports of entry. In the past, most of the people in this room voted for a wall, but the proper wall never got built. I will get it built. This is a smart, strategic, see-through steel barrier, not just a simple concrete wall. It will be deployed in the areas identified by the border agents as having the greatest need, and these agents will tell you where walls go up, illegal crossings go way, way down. San Diego used to have the most illegal border crossings in our country. In response, a strong security wall was put in place. This powerful barrier almost completely ended illegal crossings. The border city of El Paso, Texas, used to have extremely high rates of violent crime, one of the highest in the entire country, and considered one of our nation's most dangerous cities. Now, immediately upon its building, with a powerful barrier in place, El Paso is one of the safest cities in our country. Simply put, walls work and walls save lives. So let's work together, compromise, and reach a deal that will truly make America safe. As we work to defend our people's safety, we must also ensure our economic resurgence continues at a rapid pace. No one has benefited more from our thriving economy than women, who have filled 58% of the newly created jobs last year. You weren't supposed to do that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All Americans can be proud that we have more women in the workforce than ever before. Don't sit yet. You're going to like this. And exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before. That's great. Really great. And congratulations. That's great. As part of our commitment to improving opportunity for women everywhere, this Thursday, we are launching the first ever government-wide initiative focused on economic empowerment for women in developing countries. To build on, thank you. To build on our incredible economic success, one priority is paramount: reversing decades of calamitous trade policies. So bad. We are now making it clear to China that after years of targeting our industries and stealing our intellectual property, the theft of American jobs and wealth has come to an end. Therefore, we recently imposed tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods, and now our Treasury is receiving billions and billions of dollars. But I don't blame China for taking advantage of us. I blame our leaders and representatives for allowing this travesty to happen. I have great respect for President Xi, and we are now working on a new trade deal with China. But it must include real structural change to end unfair trade practices, reduce our chronic trade deficit, and protect American jobs. Thank you. Another historic trade blunder was the catastrophe known as NAFTA. I have met the men and women of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New Hampshire, and many other states whose dreams were shattered by the signing of NAFTA. For years, politicians promised them they would renegotiate for a better deal. But no one ever tried until now. Our new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the USMCA, will replace NAFTA and deliver for American workers like they haven't had delivered to for a long time. I hope you can pass the USMCA into law so that we can bring back our manufacturing jobs in even greater numbers, expand American agriculture, protect intellectual property, and ensure that more cars are proudly stamped with our 4 beautiful words, made in the USA. Tonight, I am also asking you to pass the United States Reciprocal Trade Act so that if another country places an unfair tariff on an American product, we can charge them the exact same tariff on the exact same product that they sell to us. Both parties should be able to unite for a great rebuilding of America's crumbling infrastructure. I know that Congress is eager to pass an infrastructure bill, and I am eager to work with you on legislation to deliver new and important infrastructure investment, including investments in the cutting-edge industries of the future. This is not an option. This is a necessity. The next major priority for me and for all of us should be to lower the cost of health care and prescription drugs, and to protect patients with pre-existing conditions. Already as a result of my administration's efforts in 2018, drug prices experienced their single largest decline in 46 years. But we must do more. It's unacceptable that Americans pay vastly more than people in other countries for the exact same drugs, often made in the exact same place. This is wrong, this is unfair, and together we will stop it, and we'll stop it fast. I am asking Congress to pass legislation that finally takes on the problem of global freeloading and delivers fairness and price transparency for American patients, finally. We should also require drug companies, insurance companies, and hospitals to disclose real prices to foster competition and bring costs way down. No force in history has done more to advance the human condition than American freedom. In recent years, we have made remarkable progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Scientific breakthroughs have brought a once distant dream within reach. My budget will ask Democrats and Republicans to make the needed commitment to eliminate the HIV epidemic in the United States within 10 years. We have made incredible strides, incredible. Together, we will defeat AIDS in America and beyond. Tonight, I am also asking you to join me in another fight that all Americans can get behind, the fight against childhood cancer. Joining Melania in the gallery this evening is a very brave 10-year-old girl, Grace Eline. Every birthday, hi, Grace. Every birthday since she was 4, Grace asked her friends to donate to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. She did not know that one day she might be a patient herself. That's what happened. Last year, Grace was diagnosed with brain cancer. Immediately, she began radiation treatment. At the same time, she rallied her community and raised more than $40,000 for the fight against cancer. When Grace completed treatment last fall, her doctors and nurses cheered. They loved her. They still love her. With tears in their eyes as she hung up a poster that read, "Last day of chemo." Thank you very much, Grace. You are a great inspiration to everyone in this room. Thank you very much. Many childhood cancers have not seen new therapies in decades. My budget will ask Congress for $500 million over the next 10 years to fund this critical life-saving research. To help support working parents, the time has come to pass school choice for Americans' children. I am also proud to be the first president to include in my budget a plan for nationwide paid family leave so that every new parent has the chance to bond with their newborn child. There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life. And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God. The final part of my agenda is to protect American security. Over the last 2 years, we have begun to fully rebuild the United States military with $700 billion last year and $716 billion this year. We are also getting other nations to pay their fair share. Finally. For years, the United States was being treated very unfairly by friends of ours, members of NATO. But now we have secured, over the last couple of years, more than $100 billion of increase in defense spending from our NATO allies. They said it couldn't be done. As part of our military buildup, the United States is developing a state-of-the-art missile defense system. Under my administration, we will never apologize for advancing America's interests. For example, decades ago, the United States entered into a treaty with Russia in which we agreed to limit and reduce our missile
Madam Speaker, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court. Madam Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
Members of Congress, the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States. And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again. America's enemies are on the run. America's fortunes are on the rise, and America's future is blazing bright. The years of economic decay are over. The days of our country being used, taken advantage of, and even scorned by other nations are long behind us. Gone too are the broken promises, jobless recoveries, tired platitudes, and constant excuses for the depletion of American wealth, power, and prestige. In just 3 short years, we have shattered the mentality of American decline, and we have rejected the downsizing of Americans' destiny. We have totally rejected the downsizing. We're moving forward at a pace that was unimaginable just a short time ago, and we are never, ever going back. I am thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. Our borders are secure. Our families are flourishing. Our values are renewed. Our pride is restored. And for all of these reasons, I say to the people of our great country, and to the members of Congress, the state of our union is stronger than ever before. The vision I will lay out this evening demonstrates how we are building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society, one where every citizen can join in America's unparalleled success, and where every community can take part in America's extraordinary rise. From the instant I took office, I moved rapidly to revive the U.S. economy, slashing a record number of job-killing regulations, enacting historic and record-setting tax cuts, and fighting for fair and reciprocal trade agreements. Our agenda is relentlessly pro-worker, pro-family, pro-growth, and most of all, pro-American. Thank you. We are advancing with unbridled optimism and lifting our citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed very, very high. Since my election, we have created 7 million new jobs, 5 million more than government experts projected during the previous administration. The unemployment rate is the lowest in over half a century. And very incredibly, the average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any administration in the history of our country. Yeah. If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success. The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans has reached the lowest levels in history. African American youth unemployment has reached an all-time low. African American poverty has declined to the lowest rate ever recorded. The unemployment rate for women reached the lowest level in almost 70 years, and last year women filled 72% of all new jobs added. The veterans' unemployment rate dropped to a record low. The unemployment rate for disabled Americans has reached an all-time low. Workers without a high school diploma have achieved the lowest unemployment rate recorded in U.S. history. A record number of young Americans are now employed. Under the last administration, more than 10 million people were added to the food stamp rolls. Under my administration, 7 million Americans have come off food stamps, and 10 million people have been lifted off of welfare. In 8 years under the last administration, over 300,000 working-age people dropped out of the workforce. In just 3 years of my administration, 3.5 million people, working-age people, have joined the workforce. Since my election, the net worth of the bottom half of wage earners has increased by 47%, 3 times faster than the increase for the top 1%. After decades of flat and falling incomes, wages are rising fast, and wonderfully, they are rising fastest for low-income workers who have seen a 16% pay increase since my election. This is a blue-collar boom. Real median household income is now at the highest level ever recorded. Since my election, U.S. stock markets have soared 70%, adding more than $12 trillion to our nation's wealth, transcending anything anyone believed was possible. This is a record. It is something that every country in the world is looking up to. They admire. Consumer confidence has just reached amazing new highs. All of those millions of people with 401ks and pensions are doing far better than they have ever done before, with increases of 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100% and even more. Jobs and investments are pouring into 9,000 previously neglected neighborhoods, thanks to Opportunity Zones, a plan spearheaded by Senator Tim Scott as part of our great Republican tax cuts. In other words, wealthy people and companies are pouring money into poor neighborhoods or areas that haven't seen investment in many decades, creating jobs, energy, and excitement. This is the first time that these deserving communities have seen anything like this. It's all working. Opportunity Zones are helping Americans like Army veteran Tony Rankins from Cincinnati, Ohio. After struggling with drug addiction, Tony lost his job, his house, and his family. He was homeless. But then Tony found a construction company that invests in Opportunity Zones. He is now a top tradesman, drug-free, reunited with his family, and he is here tonight. Tony, keep up the great work, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Our roaring economy has, for the first time ever, given many former prisoners the ability to get a great job and a fresh start. This second chance at life is made possible because we passed landmark criminal justice reform into law. Everybody said that criminal justice reform couldn't be done, but I got it done, and the people in this room got it done. Thanks to our bold regulatory reduction campaign, the United States has become the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world, by far. With the tremendous progress we have made over the past 3 years, America is now energy independent, and energy jobs, like so many other elements of our country, are at a record high. We are doing numbers that no one would have thought possible just 3 years ago. Likewise, we are restoring our nation's manufacturing might, even though predictions were, as you all know, that this could never, ever be done. After losing 60,000 factories under the previous 2 administrations, America has now gained 12,000 new factories under my administration, with thousands upon thousands of plants and factories being planned or being built. Companies are not leaving. They are coming back to the USA. The fact is that everybody wants to be where the action is, and the United States of America is indeed the place where the action is. One of the biggest promises I made to the American people was to replace the disastrous NAFTA trade deal. In fact, unfair trade is perhaps the single biggest reason that I decided to run for president. Following NAFTA's adoption, our nation lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. Many politicians came and went, pledging to change or replace NAFTA, only to do so, and then absolutely nothing happened. But unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. We did our job. Six days ago, I replaced NAFTA and signed the brand-new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement into law. The USMCA will create nearly 100,000 new high-paying American auto jobs and massively boost exports for our farmers, ranchers, and factory workers. It will also bring trade with Mexico and Canada to a much higher level, but also to be a much greater degree of fairness and reciprocity. We will have that fairness and reciprocity, and I say that finally because it's been many, many years that we were treated fairly on trade. This is the first major trade deal in many years to earn the strong backing of America's labor unions. I also promised our citizens that I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs. Our strategy has worked. Days ago, we signed the groundbreaking new agreement with China that will defend our workers, protect our intellectual property, bring billions and billions of dollars into our treasury, and open vast new markets for products made and grown right here in the USA. For decades, China has taken advantage of the United States. Now we have changed that. But at the same time, we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi. They respect what we've done because, quite frankly, they could never really believe that they were able to get away with what they were doing year after year, decade after decade, without someone in our country stepping up and saying, "That's enough." Now we want to rebuild our country, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are rebuilding our country. As we restore American leadership throughout the world, we are once again standing up for freedom in our hemisphere. That's why my administration reversed the failing policies of the previous administration on Cuba. We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your homeland. Thank you, Mr. President. Great honor. Thank you very much. Please take this message back that all Americans are united with the Venezuelan people in their righteous struggle for freedom. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Socialism destroys nations, but always remember, freedom unifies the soul. To safeguard American liberty, we have invested a record-breaking $2.2 trillion in the United States military. We have purchased the finest planes, missiles, rockets, ships, and every other form of military equipment, and it's all made right here in the USA. We are also getting our allies, finally, to help pay their fair share. I have raised contributions from other NATO members by more than $400 billion, and the number of allies meeting their minimum obligations has more than doubled. And just weeks ago, for the first time since President Truman established the Air Force, more than 70 years earlier, we created a brand new branch of the United States Armed Forces. It's called the Space Force. Very important. In the gallery tonight, we have a young gentleman and what he wants so badly, 13 years old, Ian Lawnfay. He's an 8th grader from Arizona. Ian, please stand up. Ian has always dreamed of going to space. He was the first in his class and among the youngest at an aviation academy. He aspires to go to the Air Force Academy, and then he has his eye on the Space Force. As Ian says, most people look up at space. I want to look down on the world. But sitting behind Ian tonight is his greatest hero of them all. Charles McGee was born in Cleveland, Ohio, 1 century ago. Charles is one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen, the first black fighter pilots, and he also happens to be Ian's great-grandfather. Incredible story. After more than 130 combat missions in World War II, he came back home to a country still struggling for civil rights and went on to serve America in Korea and Vietnam. On December 7th, Charles celebrated his 100th birthday. A few weeks ago, I signed a bill promoting Charles McGee to Brigadier General, and earlier today, I pinned the stars on his shoulders in the Oval Office. General McGee, our nation salutes you. Thank you, sir. From the Pilgrims to the founders, from the soldiers at Valley Forge to the marchers at Selma, and from President Lincoln to the Reverend Martin Luther King, Americans have always rejected limits on our children's future. Members of Congress, we must never forget that the only victories that matter in Washington are victories that deliver for the American people. The people are the heart of our country. Their dreams are the soul of our country, and their love is what powers and sustains our country. We must always remember that our job is to put America first. The next step forward in building an inclusive society is making sure that every young American gets a great education and the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Yet for too long, countless American children have been trapped in failing government schools. To rescue these students, 18 states have created school choice in the form of opportunity scholarships. The programs are so popular that tens of thousands of students remain on a waiting list. One of those students is Janiyah Davis, a fourth grader from Philadelphia. Janiyah. Janiyah's mom, Stephanie, is a single parent. She would do anything to give her daughter a better future. But last year, that future was put further out of reach when Pennsylvania's governor vetoed legislation to expand school choice to 50,000 children. Janiyah and Stephanie are in the gallery. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here with your beautiful daughter. Thank you very much. But Janiyah, I have some good news for you, because I am pleased to inform you that your long wait is over. I can proudly announce tonight that an opportunity scholarship has become available. It's going to you, and you will soon be heading to the school of your choice. Now I call on Congress to give 1 million American children the same opportunity Janiyah has just received. Pass the Education Freedom Scholarships and Opportunities Act, because no parent should be forced to send their child to a failing government school. Every young person should have a safe and secure environment in which to learn and to grow. For this reason, our magnificent First Lady has launched the Be Best initiative to advance a safe, healthy, supportive, and drug-free life for the next generation, online, in school, and in our communities. Thank you, Melania, for your extraordinary love and profound care for America's children. Thank you very much. My administration is determined to give our citizens the opportunities they need, regardless of age or background. Through our pledge to American workers, over 400 companies will also provide new jobs and education opportunities to almost 15 million Americans. My budget also contains an exciting vision for our nation's high schools. Tonight, I ask Congress to support our students and back my plan to offer vocational and technical education in every single high school in America. To expand equal opportunity, I am also proud that we achieved record and permanent funding for our nation's historically black colleges and universities. A good life for American families also requires the most affordable, innovative, and high-quality health care system on earth. Before I took office, health insurance premiums had more than doubled in just 5 years. I moved quickly to provide affordable alternatives. Our new plans are up to 60% less expensive and better. I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. And we will always protect your Medicare, and we will always protect your Social Security, always. The American patient should never be blindsided by medical bills. That is why I signed an executive order requiring price transparency. Many experts believe that transparency, which will go into full effect at the beginning of next year, will be even bigger than health care reform. It will save families massive amounts of money for substantially better care. But as we work to improve Americans' health care, there are those who want to take away your health care, take away your doctor, and abolish private insurance entirely. 132 lawmakers in this room have endorsed legislation to impose a socialist takeover of our health care system, wiping out the private health insurance plans of 180 million very happy Americans. To those watching at home tonight, I want you to know we will never let socialism destroy American health care. Over 130 legislators in this chamber have endorsed legislation that would bankrupt our nation by providing free taxpayer-funded health care to millions of illegal aliens, forcing taxpayers to subsidize free care for anyone in the world who unlawfully crosses our borders. These proposals would raid the Medicare benefits of our seniors and that our seniors depend on, while acting as a powerful lure for illegal immigration. That is what is happening in California and other states. Their systems are totally out of control, costing taxpayers vast and unaffordable amounts of money. If forcing American taxpayers to provide unlimited free health care to illegal aliens sounds fair to you, then stand with the radical left. But if you believe that we should defend American patients and American seniors, then stand with me and pass legislation to prohibit free government health care for illegal aliens. This will be a tremendous boon to our already very strongly guarded southern border, where, as we speak, a long, tall, and very powerful wall is being built. We have now completed over 100 miles and have over 500 miles fully completed in a very short period of time. Early next year, we will have substantially more than 500 miles completed. My administration is also taking on the big pharmaceutical companies. We have approved a record number of affordable generic drugs, and medicines are being approved by the FDA at a faster clip than ever before. And I was pleased to announce last year that for the first time in 51 years, the cost of prescription drugs actually went down. And working together, Congress can reduce drug prices substantially from current levels. I've been speaking to Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa and others in Congress in order to get something on drug pricing done, and done quickly and properly. I'm calling for bipartisan legislation that achieves the goal of dramatically lowering prescription drug prices. Get a bill on my desk and I will sign it into law immediately. With unyielding commitment, we are curbing the opioid epidemic. Drug overdose deaths declined for the first time in nearly 30 years. Among the states hardest hit, Ohio is down 22%, Pennsylvania is down 18%, Wisconsin is down 10%, and we will not quit until we have beaten the opioid epidemic once and for all. Protecting Americans' health also means fighting infectious diseases. We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat. We have launched ambitious new initiatives to substantially improve care for Americans with kidney disease, Alzheimer's, and those struggling with mental health. And because Congress was so good as to fund my request, new cures for childhood cancer, and we will eradicate the AIDS epidemic in America by the end of this decade. Almost every American family knows the pain when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country. And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please. Rush and Catherine, congratulations. Thank you, Catherine. As we pray for all who are sick, we know that America is constantly achieving new medical breakthroughs. In 2017, doctors at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City delivered one of the earliest premature babies ever to survive. Born at just 21 weeks and 6 days and weighing less than a pound, Ellie Schneider was a born fighter. Through the skill of her doctors and the prayers of her parents, little Ellie kept on winning the battle of life. Today, Ellie is a strong, healthy 2-year-old girl sitting with her amazing mother, Robin. In the gallery, Ellie and Robin, we are glad to have you with us tonight. Ellie reminds us that every child is a miracle of life. And thanks to modern medical wonders, 50% of very premature babies delivered at the hospital where Ellie was born now survive. It's an incredible thing. Thank you very much. Our goal should be to ensure that every baby has the best chance to thrive and grow just like Ellie. That is why I'm asking Congress to provide an additional $50 million to fund neonatal research for America's youngest patients. That is why I'm also calling upon members of Congress here tonight to pass legislation finally banning the late-term abortion of babies. Whether we are Republican, Democrat, or Independent, surely we must all agree that every human life is a sacred gift from God. As we support America's moms and dads, I was recently proud to sign the law providing new parents in the federal workforce paid family leave, serving as a model for the rest of the country. Now I call on Congress to pass the bipartisan Advancing Support for Working Families Act, extending family leave to mothers and fathers all across our nation. $40 million American families have an average $2,200 extra thanks to our child tax credit. I've also overseen historic funding increases for high-quality child care, enabling 17 states to help more children, many of which have reduced or eliminated their wait lists altogether. And I sent Congress a plan with a vision to further expand access to high-quality child care and urge you to act immediately. To protect the environment, days ago, I announced that the United States will join the 1 Trillion Trees Initiative, an ambitious effort to bring together government and private sector to plant new trees in America and all around the world. We must also rebuild America's infrastructure. I ask you to pass Senator John Barrasso's highway bill to invest in new roads, bridges, and tunnels all across our land. I'm also committed to ensuring that every citizen can have access to high-speed internet, including and especially in rural America. A better tomorrow for all Americans also requires us to keep America safe. That means supporting the men and women of law enforcement at every level, including our nation's heroic ICE officers. Last year, our brave ICE officers arrested more than 120,000 criminal aliens charged with nearly 10,000 burglaries, 5,000 sexual assaults, 45,000 violent assaults, and 2,000 murders. Tragically, there are many cities in America where radical politicians have chosen to provide sanctuary for these criminal illegal aliens. In sanctuary cities, local officials order police to release dangerous criminal aliens to prey upon the public instead of handing them over to ICE to be safely removed. Just 29 days ago, a criminal alien freed by the sanctuary city of New York was charged with the brutal rape and murder of a 92-year-old woman. The killer had been previously arrested for assault, but under New York sanctuary policies, he was set free. If the city had honored ICE's detainer request, his victim would still be alive today. The state of California passed an outrageous law declaring their whole state to be a sanctuary for criminal illegal immigrants, a very terrible sanctuary with catastrophic results. Here is just one tragic example. In December 2018, California police detained an illegal alien with 5 prior arrests, including convictions for robbery and assault. But as required by California's sanctuary law, local authorities released him. Days later, the criminal alien went on a gruesome spree of deadly violence. He viciously shot one man going about his daily work. He approached a woman sitting in her car and shot her in the arm and in the chest. He walked into a convenience store and wildly fired his weapon. He hijacked a truck and smashed into vehicles, critically injuring innocent victims. One of the victims is a terrible, terrible situation. Died, 51-year-old American named Rocky Jones. Rocky was at a gas station when this vile criminal fired 8 bullets at him from close range, murdering him in cold blood. Rocky left behind a devoted family, including his brothers, who loved him more than anything else in the world. One of his grieving brothers is here with us tonight. Jody, would you please stand? Jody, thank you. Jody, our hearts weep for your loss, and we will not rest until you have justice. Senator Tom Tillis has introduced legislation to allow Americans like Jody to sue sanctuary cities and states when a loved one is hurt or killed as a result of these deadly practices. I ask Congress to pass the Justice for Victims of Sanctuary Cities Act immediately. The United States of America should be a sanctuary for law-abiding Americans, not criminal aliens. In the last 3 years, ICE has arrested over 5,000 wicked human traffickers, and I have signed 9 pieces of legislation to stamp out the menace of human trafficking domestically and all around the globe. My administration has undertaken an unprecedented effort to secure the southern border of the United States. Before I came into office, if you showed up illegally on our southern border and were arrested, you were simply released and allowed into our country, never to be seen again. My administration has ended catch and release. If you come illegally, you will now be promptly removed from our country. Very importantly, we entered into historic cooperation agreements with the governments of Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. As a result of our unprecedented efforts, illegal crossings are down 75% since May, dropping 8 straight months in a row. And as the wall rapidly goes up, drug seizures rise, and the border crossings are going down and going down very rapidly. Last year, I traveled to the border in Texas and met Chief Patrol Agent Raul Ortiz. Over the last 24 months, Agent Ortiz and his team have seized more than 200,000 pounds of poisonous narcotics, arrested more than 3,000 human smugglers, and rescued more than 2,000 migrants. Days ago, Agent Ortiz was promoted to Deputy Chief of Border Patrol, and he joins us tonight. Chief Ortiz, please stand. A grateful nation thanks you and all of the heroes of Border Patrol and ICE. Thank you very much. Thank you. To build on these historic gains, we are working on legislation to replace our outdated and randomized immigration system with one based on merit, welcoming those who follow the rules, contribute to our economy, support themselves financially, and uphold our values. With every action, my administration is restoring the rule of law and reasserting the culture of American freedom. Working with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, thank you, Mitch, and his colleagues in the Senate, we have confirmed a record number of 187 new federal judges to uphold our Constitution as written. This includes two brilliant new Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Thank you. And we have many in the pipeline. My administration is also defending religious liberty, and that includes the constitutional right to pray in public schools. In America, we don't punish prayer. We don't tear down crosses. We don't ban symbols of faith. We don't muzzle preachers and pastors. In America, we celebrate faith. We cherish religion. We lift our voices in prayer, and we raise our sights to the glory of God. Just as we believe in the First Amendment, we also believe in another constitutional right that is under siege all across our country. So long as I am president, I will always protect your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. In reaffirming our heritage as a free nation, we must remember that America has always been a frontier nation. Now we must embrace the next frontier, America's manifest destiny in the stars. I am asking Congress to fully fund the Artemis program to ensure that the next man and the first woman on the moon will be American astronauts, using this as a launching pad to ensure that America is the first nation to plant its flag on Mars. My administration is also strongly defending our national security and combating radical Islamic terrorism. Last week, I announced a groundbreaking plan for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Recognizing that all past attempts have failed, we must be determined and creative in order to stabilize the region and give millions of young people the chance to realize a better future. 3 years ago, the barbarians of ISIS held over 20,000 square miles of territory in Iraq and Syria. Today, the ISIS territorial caliphate has been 100% destroyed, and the founder and leader of ISIS, the bloodthirsty killer known as al-Baghdadi, is dead. We are joined this evening by Carl and Marcia Mueller. After graduating from college, their beautiful daughter, Carla, became a humanitarian aid worker. She once wrote, "Some people find God in church. Some people find God in nature. Some people find God in love. I find God in suffering. I've known for some time what my life's work is, using my hands as tools to relieve suffering." In 2013, while caring for suffering civilians in Syria, Kayla was kidnapped, tortured, and enslaved by ISIS and kept as a prisoner of al-Baghdadi himself. After more than 500 horrifying days of captivity, al-Baghdadi murdered young, beautiful Kayla. She was just 26 years old. on the night that U.S. Special Forces operations ended al-Baghdadi's miserable life, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, received a call in the Situation Room. He was told that the brave men of the elite Special Forces team that so perfectly carried out the operation had given their mission a name, Task Force 814. It was a reference to a special day, August 14th, Kayla's birthday. Carl and Marcia, America's warriors, never forgot Kayla, and neither will we. Thank you. Every day, America's men and women in uniform demonstrate the infinite depth of love that dwells in the human heart. One of these American heroes was Army Staff Sergeant Christopher Hake. On his second deployment to Iraq in 2008, Sergeant Hake wrote a letter to his one-year-old son, Gage. "I will be with you again," he wrote to Gage. "I will teach you to ride your first bike, build your first sandbox, watch you play sports, and see you have kids also. I love you, son. Take care of your mother. I am always with you, Daddy." On Easter Sunday of 2008, Chris was out on patrol in Baghdad when his Bradley fighting vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb. That night, he made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Sergeant Hake now rests in eternal glory in Arlington, and his wife, Kelly, is in the gallery tonight, joined by their son, who is now a 13-year-old and doing very, very well. To Kelly and Gage, Chris will live in our hearts forever. He is looking down on you now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both very much. The terrorist responsible for killing Sergeant Hake was Qasem Soleimani, who provided the deadly roadside bomb that took Chris's life. Soleimani was the Iranian regime's most ruthless butcher, a monster who murdered or wounded thousands of American service members in Iraq. As the world's top terrorist, Soleimani orchestrated the deaths of countless men, women, and children. He directed the December assault and went on to assault U.S. forces in Iraq, was actively planning new attacks when we hit him very hard. And that's why last month, at my direction, the U.S. military executed a flawless precision strike that killed Soleimani and terminated his evil reign of terror forever. Our message to the terrorists is clear. You will never escape American justice. If you attack our citizens, you forfeit your life. In recent months, we have seen proud Iranians raise their voices against their oppressive rulers. The Iranian regime must abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stop spreading terror, death, and destruction, and start working for the good of its own people. Because of our powerful sanctions, the Iranian economy is doing very, very poorly. We can help them make a very good and short time recovery. It can all go very quickly, but perhaps they are too proud or too foolish to ask for that help. We are here. Let's see which road they choose. It is totally up to them. As we defend American lives, we are working to end America's wars in the Middle East. In Afghanistan, the determination and valor of our warfighters has allowed us to make tremendous progress, and peace talks are now underway. I am not looking to kill hundreds of thousands of people in Afghanistan, many of them totally innocent. It is also not our function to serve other nations as law enforcement agencies. These are warfighters that we have, the best in the world, and they either want to fight to win or not fight at all. We are working to finally end America's longest war and bring our troops back home. War places a heavy burden on our nation's extraordinary military families, especially spouses like Amy Williams from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and her two children, 6-year-old Eliana and 3-year-old Rowan. Amy works full-time and volunteers countless hours helping other military families. For the past 7 months, she has done it all while her husband, Sergeant First Class Townsend Williams, is in Afghanistan on his 4th deployment in the Middle East. Amy's kids haven't seen their father's face in many months. Amy, your family's sacrifice makes it possible for all of our families to live in safety and in peace, and we want to thank you. Thank you, Amy. But Amy, there is one more thing. Tonight we have a very special surprise. I am thrilled to inform you that your husband is back from deployment. He is here with us tonight, and we couldn't keep him waiting any longer. Welcome home, Sergeant Williams. Thank you very much. As the world bears witness tonight, America is a land of heroes. This is a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The beautiful, beautiful Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers, and ladies and gentlemen, our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are pioneers. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world. And we changed history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Dan Hennon. Today is March 17th, 2019, and I'll be going over in today's broadcast an update on current events, things going on here in the last 7 to 10 days, bringing everyone up to date. A lot of things in the news cycle regarding the President Trump, the Michael Cohen testimony, the Paul Manafort sentencing, Stormy Daniels, the Russia collusion. And now that we've got closure on some of these things, I'd like to get everyone up to speed. The reason for this broadcast is it's very different than what you're going to see on mainstream media. And in talking with people and overhearing conversations and reading the news, reading the newspapers, watching TV, there's not a lot of truth out there. You have to really dig to find out what's really going on, and there's a lot of propaganda out there. And by overhearing conversations and listening to folks speak and talk on this very topic, it's evident to me that there's not a clear understanding of this whole, I would call it the Steele dossier, the UK issues with the FISA, the FISC court, the FISA warrants, the renewing of the FISA warrants, all of this Russia collusion. So let's start off there, and then I'll bring up some images and some websites and some documentation and some graphics to help to put all of this into perspective. It's very confusing, and the other side of this is that it's very confusing on purpose. It's to get the average general person, the average John Q. public, to say, this is over my head, I don't care. I'll just listen to what the news has to tell me about it, and that'll be it. So what we have is the final conclusion of the Russia collusion. They've found out there's nothing there. There never was anything there. There was no Russia collusion, and there was a lot of lying and a lot of people inserted into these roles to play roles and to act to play roles, and there's even plants included in this whole thing. And so let's get started on some of this. It's very confusing, and hopefully I can shed some light. Please feel free to comment at the bottom of this, at the comments section of this broadcast, and hopefully we'll raise some additional awareness and ask questions on some of these things, as it is very convoluted and looking to clear the air on some of this stuff. Let's start off with Mr. Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen has been in the news and just finished, I think it was 3, 4, 5 days of testimony, and he's got all this damning evidence against President Trump. He was once Trump's lawyer and a very close confidant. But then what happened? What happened with Cohen to drive this wedge between him and Trump? Well, let's start here. If you do any kind of Google search on Michael Cohen, he's offering to show documents. He's trying to show that there was collusion and Trump's a bad guy, and he's giving this testimony and he's willing to go on the record, but he's also at the same time shows that he's trying to get a pardon. So he's compromised to some extent. We don't know how, but I would not personally believe a word Mr. Michael Cohen has to say, and that's because of this. Remember back in April of 2018, that strange fire on the 50th floor of Trump Tower? And so what the mainstream media said is there's this fire broke out, smoke was billowing from the 50th floor, one of the residents died. But to keep in mind, when this happened, this building, this location was evacuated because of the fire. So you have to ask yourself, why was there a fire? Who benefits and who is hurt by a fire like this? We know it was probably purposely set to get at something else. And so we know that Trump's office, I think is on the 24th or 26th floor there for Trump, the businesses that Trump runs. Now, Michael Cohen is a lawyer for the Trump businesses, and has an office on the same floor, the 26th or the 24th floor. So when everyone got evacuated, what all happened on this day, April 7th, April 8th, all the news is focusing on this fire at the Trump Tower. What we get is the series of FBI raids take place on April 9th. That's the day, 1 to 2 days later. And what they find, the FBI finds documents relating to Stormy Daniels, bank records, all of this information they find after raiding the very next day Michael Cohen's office, which they don't tell you is in the Trump Tower. So after this convenient evacuation, way up 20 stories above, 25 stories above, up on the 50th floor where this fire takes place, what are they really doing down below? Now, QAnon, if you follow QAnon, or Q, mentions the very next day that before the raids took place, there was a break-in at the Trump offices. Now that also didn't make the news, but Q informs us from the President Trump team that there was a break-in at the Trump offices. During this fire, during this evacuation, there was evidence of someone was gaining access during that evacuation. So more than likely, FBI was involved in planting evidence, planting documents there in the 26th floor. Next day, conveniently, they raid, they find all this stuff on Stormy Daniels, bank records. Stormy Daniels is another one that has been, I believe, turned, bought off, or compromised. So we see the fire, we see the raids, and it was this point, and only this point, that Michael Cohen became a bad guy in the Trump organization. He somehow was turned, they got the goods on him big time. And ever since then, all Michael Cohen has been talking about is anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. Now we know before this raid took place in April, and the documents came out in April, back in December of 2017, there was mentioning of this woman, this figure, this person named Stormy Daniels that allegedly had an affair or some kind of relationship with Donald Trump. This was mind you, this is another smear campaign. They're trying to connect Stormy back in December of 2017 with Donald Trump in an effort to discredit, make him look bad. She's a porn star, an adult film actress. How can we connect these two together? So this was December. Beginning of January, more and more of this is coming to light. Not in the mainstream news yet, but it comes to light. Enough so that Stormy writes on this January 10th document to the media, to whom it may concern, from Stormy Daniels, early in January of 2018, by saying, yes, I know him, he's been nice to me, he's been respectful, we've never had a relationship, we've never had a sexual relationship. And she wants to cut this off at the pass before it gets further into the news, that these stories are not true. And I remember reading this when this first came out. Now, the mainstream media did not cover this at all. So no truth to any of the Stormy Daniels connections. And so we get this Michael Cohen headlining the news, Stormy Daniels headlining the news. And this is all what I would say bogus altogether. So now we get into the collusion. Let's go back to this collusion. Russia collusion. They're trying to tie Donald Trump with Russia and trying to say that they got in to change the results of the election, that there was collusion, that there was compromise, and this Donald Trump is a bad guy. He's working with the Kremlin. He's working with Putin. And so let's get into the FISA. In order to understand all this talk about the FISA warrants, the Fisk court, this surveillance, this international surveillance, this intelligence gathering, you've got to understand that all of it is based on a lie. So in a typical case, you get the FISA warrant. This warrant, if signed and issued and approved by a judge, is a valid for a 90-day window. So if you were to surveil someone, in this case Carter Page, they said he's connected and to Trump, and he's a bad guy, and therefore Trump is tied to Russia. To understand how this works is you need to get someone, in this case compromised individuals, to then get it approved with enough evidence to get it issued and approved and signed off, to be able to surveil someone. Now this is unprecedented. They were surveilling, at the time, President Trump, who was a candidate. Now, not only is this FISA warrant given and signed off on and approved and then given to a FISC judge, they had to sign off on it. So what we get here is I'm trying to make the folks understand that this was signed off and approved not once, but 5 times. And so the first case it's signed off on, it's ready to be expired 90 days later, and it has to be then renewed with different information or furthering information that fell out of the scope of the first FISA warrant. So this is how they were able to extend this or renew this 4 additional times. So you get 90 days, then you get it renewed for 90 days to continue the surveillance. For a 90-day period, another 90-day period, 3, 4 times. It was renewed 4 times. And so here's where we get the individuals involved. General Mike Flynn was part of one of those. He, we know, was threatened, or his family was threatened, which led him to pleading guilty to something that he didn't even do. That came out later in the testimony, that whatever he pled guilty to, it couldn't have even been true. So why did Mike Flynn plead guilty to something he didn't do? Well, the belief there is that him, his family, or someone was threatened along the way to go along with it, and sure enough, Robert Mueller, special investigation, corrupt as they get, is involved in this to be signed off on and issued and approved. Then we get George Papadopoulos, also connected with Trump. And I believe there was rumors that he was also threatened in some way, shape, or form to get information for him to talk about something that was allowed to get this whole thing issued and approved. Then we get Paul Manafort. Now, Manafort, recently sentenced, turns out QAnon tells us that he was a plant into the Trump campaign. Running for president, he was a plant. So back then already they've got plants being inserted into this campaign. Trump thinks he's a good guy, hires him on, and Manafort's squealing the whole time back to the Democratic side, the DNC, of what he is learning to help get these things, warrants, approved. Manafort turns out to be a bad guy, a plant. Carter Page, also a plant, was involved in this as well, helping to take Trump down as his information gets approved by Robert Mueller. Once again, gets these FISA warrants issued and approved. And then we get Loretta Lynch, also a bad actor involved in all of this, and her connections to Natalia Veselnitskaya. Now, she's the Russian attorney from the Ukraine that was involved in the Jared Kushner and Donald Trump Jr. meeting, allegedly. We'll get into that as well. And that ties back to Paul Manafort again to help get that approved and issued. So what we've got is a various deception being taken place by all of these things. I would like to start off with the Loretta Lynch, Natalia Veselnitskaya connection first. Now this starts off, innocently enough, with Mr. Sergei Magnitsky. Unrelated to the Trump collusion, unrelated to the Russia collusion. But this is how all this ties in together. Sergey, Russian accountant, and I believe he was an attorney then as well, was found dead in 2009. He was the individual who blew the whistle in Russia. So Sergey blew the whistle in Russia to corruption, tax corruption, way back in 2007 and 2008. He was a Russian accountant and attorney for an investment firm named Hermitage Capital. He blew the whistle, blamed the Russian officials for a tax scheme fraud that stole $230 million US dollars at the time that the Russian officials were doing. He blew the whistle. Did this in 2007, 2008. He put together his paperwork, and in 2008 they turned around and jailed him for trumped up.
You believe that the entire Russian investigation is a witch hunt and a hoax, is that correct?
I can only speak for myself.
Okay, let's turn this off here.
I used that terminology in my letter.
Okay. Sorry about that. So Sergey blows the whistle, right? He blows the whistle on a tax scheme. They turn around as a whistleblower. Now they blame him, discredit him, throw him in jail in 2008. He died in 2009. Only a year later. Young guy, 40 years old, I believe. And after looking at it, it looks like he was beaten by the guards there in prison. This was 2009. They say he just died of natural causes. Evidence shows that he was beaten by the guards. So, this is how the whole thing now begins. There's a company called Prevazon Holdings, owned by Denis Katsev. Now, Denis Katsev is a wealthy family, comes from a wealthy family, and is connected to the Kremlin. His attorney, was this Ukraine gal by the name of Velsinskaya, and he hires her in 2015 and 2016 on this case that relates to this tax scheme. His attorney before that was Faith Gay. Now, Faith Gay was the attorney. Then he gets Velinetskaya. They ended up settling in May 2017 for $6 million. After the company was sued for over $200 million back in 2014, this case began. It went 3 full years. They finally settle and only get $6 million out of the deal. Now, Velinetskaya, she doesn't speak or read English. She is dealing with the case in the Ukraine and in Russia as the case for this Katsev. Now, the case is taking place, the lawsuit's taking place in the United States, the trial. Donald Trump Jr. now and Jared Kushner is told, this is how they set it up, that someone from Russia is going to be coming in and they've got, someone's got the goods on Hillary Clinton. A Russian lawyer has got the goods on Hillary Clinton. Would you like to hear the goods? Trump Jr. says, sounds good. I'd like to meet with her. I'd like to know what's going on here. Now, this is how they ensnare Trump Jr. and Jared Kushner in this whole thing. Now, Velinetskaya is there, can't get to the U.S. until she gets a special access to come to the United States to travel to the U.S. Loretta Lynch signs off on this approval to come in, knowing we can get a Russian attorney here and connect them back to Trump and Kushner. President Trump later on hears about this and questions how exactly did Velinetskaya get into the U.S. They said, oh, we've got proof here. They show that it's Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, that approved the travel. They approved her to come. Just for one, I think it was only 1 or 2 days to give testimony or something about that case. They said, get her in here, get her here on U.S. On U.S. grounds. Lynch later denies it, says, I didn't sign off on anything. And so, allegedly, people saw Velenitskaya in the halls of Congress as well, and she certainly was here, and the paperwork does show that Loretta Lynch signed off on getting her here. She is here, finishing up that trial, and is told that Trump Jr. and Kushner want to meet with her about this, overturning this act, this Sergei, the act of 2012, after the death of Sergei. The Congress passes a law about this whistleblowing act, and they call it the Magnitsky Act of 2012. Now, this Russian lawyer from the Ukraine, Velenitskaya, is trying to overturn this act. She's here, and at the same time, she says, I can meet with these guys because they're trying to overturn this act and they want to help out. So she thinks, yes. She goes, yes, I'm interested in meeting with Kushner and Trump because they want to help me overturn. Well, Trump's father is the president of the U.S. That's pretty powerful stuff. I'll certainly listen to see what they have to say. So they get this meeting together that took place in Trump Tower. Paul Manafort, who's the plant, says, I'll meet with you guys then too. So June 9th of 2016, Kushner and Trump Jr. think we're going to get the goods on Hillary. Let's see what this is. We're more than likely interested in learning about what this Russian person has on her. Well, that was their own fault. They never should agree to this meeting. Trump later released a correspondence with this. He was meeting with the publicist. He was meeting with the publicist that says, I can get you guys together. Set up by this guy named Browder. He says that it shows the correspondence that they show on this emails going back and forth to set up this meeting said that she only wanted to meet to discuss repealing the Magnitsky Act of 2012. And it later on turns out that this meeting was wiretapped by the FBI and the CIA using the GCHQ intelligence operatives from the UK. Now they've got that Trump and Kushner were meeting. This Browder character, who was setting this up, formerly worked with the John Kerry campaign. He's connected to John Brennan. He's connected to Sid Blumenthal. He's connected to Cody Shearer. The meeting was also set up by this Rob Goldstone, who's a British music publicist. He's the publicist that told Trump Jr. that we can get these guys, we can get her together. So after this meeting takes place, they're wiretapped. They find out the meeting was for the wrong purposes. Trump Jr. and Kushner didn't know anything about the Magnitsky Act of 2012 when Velenitskaya brought it up, saying let's talk about this. And they're like, what have you got for the goods on Hillary Clinton? She's like, I don't know anything about Hillary Clinton. So the meeting breaks up. Nothing happens. Both sides of the story were coerced into going for it. Now, it was right after this point that we see that the DNC announces the very next week that we were hacked. The Democratic Convention, the DNC says we're hacked. This is 2016. And later they say that they were hacked, and we think that Russia was responsible for the hack. Now, we know that Seth Rich from the DNC was the whistleblower who got the information, put it on a thumb drive or a jump drive, grabbed the info and released it directly to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And later, Seth Rich was killed for that by MS-13 operatives who were killed the very next day themselves. So we know there was no hack on the DNC. Seth Rich released that information. So this is all where it gets very fuzzy. And around the same time, we see the Podesta emails were released. And keep in mind now, the Podesta emails were never hacked, but the folks that got the Podesta emails found it because it was a result of a phishing scheme. Phishing spelled P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. phishing scheme. He clicked on a link that exposed his password as actually being password itself. So anonymous folks were able to get all of his emails and dumped them all. Now all this was going on at the same time that Fusion GPS was being paid by Hillary. Fusion GPS co-founder was Glenn Simpson. Fusion was paid to create the dossier written by Christopher Steele from the UK. Christopher Steele is former MI5. Simpson was working for Baker Hostetler to get research on the Katsiv case that Velenitskaya was working on. Simpson, in the meantime, doesn't like Trump, never did like Trump, and began receiving memos from Christopher Steele. He put them all together and said, this is the Steele dossier. Steele, in turn, was paid by the DNC and the Clinton campaign for his efforts. Now, a contractor for Fusion GPS was Nellie Orr. Nellie Orr, turns out, was a CIA analyst. Her husband is Bruce Orr, currently working with the DOJ. So they were able to investigate the Trump campaign while having no intelligence to begin with. No actionable intelligence of anyone coercing or connecting or colluding with anyone. Because of the meeting and the wiretapping in Trump Tower, the Obama administration now has the evidence they need to evidence to wiretap the Trump campaign, so they applied for the FISA and got it. And it was renewed 4 times. Velenitskaya really, essentially, it was turned out that she was a pawn that was set up by Browder. She figured that out and even told Trump Jr. in good faith to watch out for this guy. So she contacts Trump Jr. to say, watch out for this guy Browder, because he set me up on information that was not correct. Trump Jr. says he was set up on information that was not correct, and that's how they get Jared Kushner in all this. Now let's go back to the FISA warrants. I've got the screen up here that shows the various people involved in all of this. The connection to make all this work is that they've got various people planted in the organization, good guys, and bad actors in all of this. But in order for this to take off, you got to get things to fall into place. Carter Page was the root of all of this. He's the founder and managing partner for a company called Global Energy Capital, GEC. Carter Page, that business that he was involved with, did take him to Russia, Russia for business and whatnot. So they were able to get him in and coerce him. He was a plant. But we get the FISA warrants that were signed off. Now, in order to get it signed off, you need a judge to sign them off. Now, we know that James Comey signed off on several of these from the FBI. Sally Yates signed off on several of these. Rod Rosenstein signed off on several of these. And Andy McCabe was involved. All of these are known bad actors. So we get the corrupt or the deep state involved in approving and signing off these things to be able to take them to the FISA court judge to get the approval at that level. Now, what we find out in this, there's judges. Here's the names of the judges that signed off. I do believe that these guys are corrupt as well, because none of these warrants had actionable intelligence to be able to take this further. It was all soft to begin with. Michael Mosman was one of them. Rosemary Collier was one of them. Ann Conway was one of the judges. And Raymond Deary was one of the judges. Now, the chief judge of all these is Rosemary Collier. So why aren't the good guys or the white hats investigating these judges? This is where the corruption, really the root of them. Now, if you go up to the Supreme Court, the person that handles all of these FISA judges is actually Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. So the question is, I'm pulling up an article here, a great article from The Hill. If you get a chance to read this article, it is very good. John Roberts is not behind this, but he's ultimately responsible for this.
Yes, I'm a smoker.
So we know that Steele was involved, Christopher Steele. We know that Hillary Clinton, the DNC, the Fisk judges, the Supreme Court justice, the FBI, and the DOJ. So all very interesting on this article itself. Now, to make these things all come into play, one needs to have an understanding of how the Five Eyes intelligence gathering works. Five Eyes. Now, there's 5 countries involved with intelligence gathering that are spying on other countries. This is how it works here in my crude graphic. 5 countries. All 5 countries, number one, have rules and legislation and legally have rules that each of these 5 countries are not allowed to spy on their own citizens. United States cannot gather intelligence on their own people within the U.S. Australia cannot gather intelligence or spy or surveil on their own citizens. And so the workaround on this is that the 5 countries here got together with their intelligence services and said, how about we spy on you, on another country, and that does not place us in violation of these surveillance rules. So this is current today. Australia does their surveillance and gathers intelligence on Canada and Canada only. Canada surveils and gets their intelligence on New Zealand without doing anything wrong. New Zealand spies and gets its surveillance on the UK, United Kingdom, and the UK spies on the US, and the US does all spying on Australia. These 5 Eyes go in this circle and in this route. This is also what QAnon tells us. So what the UK is doing all its spying on the U.S. to begin with. So it makes sense when they wanted to get this whole dossier together is to start there. They're already surveilling us. So this is where we get John McCain, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, the dossier, Christopher Steele, and their intelligence services there in the UK is called GCHQ. The CIA's station chief back then was Gina Haspel. Gina Haspel was the CIA station chief in London. Now, when all this started coming out and revealing that the spying was going on and they're trying to throw Trump under the bus, does it make sense now that Trump went on to hire and promote Gina Haspel, of all the people out there, to promote her to be director of CIA? So he brings her back. She's now the director of Central Intelligence. The NSA was the corrupt surveillance organization back then, but now Trump names Mr. Mike Rogers head of that. And over the last 3-4 years, Mike Rogers has turned the NSA into the good guys. They're collecting all the surveillance, collecting everything. Not to get the bad guys, not to discredit the whistleblowers, no, but they're using this to provide all the evidence on what's really going on here. So now we get Gina Haspel, who knows what's going on back in the days when McCain, Strzok, Lisa Page were in the UK doing their shenanigans, getting this information to bring down Trump. Also makes sense now why Lisa Page, her testimony just became public. Peter Strzok's testimony just became public. John McCain's medical history with his brain tumor got conceivably worse, and conveniently dying when he knew that he was going to be coming into this entire mess. All this gets exposed. Christopher Steele was being paid by both the DNC and Hillary, and all this goes round and round it goes. That's why I think they went this route to get the goods and come up with this fake Russia collusion, because those folks active in the UK had it all anyway. Now we get, I believe this is where John Brennan gets involved, James Clapper gets involved. All of these guys in the deep state now are connected. The wiretapping begins. Obama's involved with that. The judges and the Fisk judges. We get Sally Yates, James Comey, Andy McCabe, Rod Rosenstein. All of these players coming all together to make this work. And for a while, it did work. The general public, I did believe that Russia was colluding. Trump was colluding with Russia. Some have gone as far as to say that Trump was a Russian agent. So that we know now, no collusion with Russia. Russia had nothing to do with anything. They could care less about our election. They're certainly not impacting the election. Now I've got some notes to wrap up here. Remember back when McCabe said that Trump called McCabe's wife a loser? So we get all this. This is where all the lying now begins. Trump came back and said, that never happened. I've never ever called your wife a loser. And the recording became public in that very conversation, which showed exactly just that. The recording became public, once again, from the NSA. They've got it all. Rogers and the NSA found that recording. Never was anything that proved that at all. Now, the other thing that recently came to light, Congressman from California, Adam Schiff, it came out now with the documentation that came out that he knew about the Steele dossier as well, and he went as far as to prevent Congress from even finding out about it. So the manipulation is, it's just unbelievable, the players involved here and what Trump had to contend with, and Trump's campaign team, and this Mueller investigation that's taken 2.5 years, and the millions of dollars that has taken. Now, Peter Strzok's testimony came out, and boy, I read that. That is something else. If you get a chance to read this, the Peter Strzok FBI intelligence, his testimony. Now, he's got some very interesting things there. Page 75 mentions the Anthony Weiner laptop, which also ties into all of this. Not to the Trump collusion, but the Weiner laptop ties back to the Hillary Clinton and the Podesta information. And page 104 of the Strzok testimony is when Trey Gowdy gets in to do his examination and his questioning, and boy, does that get interesting. The first 103 pages of the testimony was basically individuals from Congress giving Peter Strzok softball questions that he could easily answer and make him look very good. Trey Gowdy gets in there, and really, at that point, if you read that testimony, it's when Peter Strzok finds out that he is way over his head, as Gowdy's testimony just crucifies him. I mean, he gets exposed really bad. On page 106 of the Peter Strzok testimony, the redactions all begin. Lots of redactions start on 106. Page 141, the SES is even mentioned. That was supposed to be some conspiracy that was false. The SES services, that's the executive services in Congress, is where those executives are brought in. That service is to bring in and to place executive level people that I think that are all compromised to begin with, is to head up management level and executive level jobs in the White House, Congress, and State Department, Department of Justice. That's mentioned. He calls it also the code name mid-year exam. The Senior Executive Services, that's what it's called. The Senior Executive Services, that's also mentioned at page 12 of the testimony. So that is very much a true deal. That is where a lot of the corruption begins with in Washington, D.C., was people involved in the SES. Page 147, the Five Eyes is mentioned. The intelligence of the Five Eyes, intelligence gathering, is mentioned on page 147 of the Strzok testimony. Back to Michael Cohen. A thing to note in mainstream media, if you hear anything from Judge Napolitano, Judge, I used to like him, Judge N, or Judge Nap Napolitano, really was on the mainstream media news outlets as a good guy in the past. I'm not sure what happened recently with him, but he has turned really bad and really nasty. He went so as far now recently, in the last couple of weeks, to promote Cohen as a good guy, to say place your trust in Michael Cohen. And I don't know what happened to Mr. Napolitano there, but he's really gotten down the wrong path. Now, if you go back to the testimony when Supreme Court Justice, not Whitaker, who's the Supreme Court Justice that was nominated? He really went after him. It was Napolitano, actually, that went after him. It was the Kavanaugh hearings. And boy, did Napolitano go after Kavanaugh as far as to say that he was the author and helped pen the Patriot Act back in 2001, and to claim that Kavanaugh himself is deep state. And after researching that, the only person I ever saw anything with the Patriot Act connected to Kavanaugh was coming out of Napolitano's mouth. So he was spewing that disinformation, and I'm not sure what for or why that was. Let me go further into my notes. The Lisa Page testimony, that's worth reading then as well. The Lisa Page. Remember, she's now a cooperating witness. Lisa Page was the bad guy. Now is a cooperating witness. Peter Strzok, bad guy, now a cooperating witness. Lisa Page's testimony was very interesting. She revealed that on March 12th. And if you go to page 109 in her testimony, page 109 clearly says that President Obama back then knew about this project. This midterm exam was the code name for going after the insurance policy to make sure Hillary Clinton wins the election. They knew she was going to win, but they had an insurance policy to say, if in the case of Plan B that she doesn't, we can go after Trump big time because of all this Russia collusion. So Obama was aware of that. That's treason, that's sedition right there with Obama in this whole plan. Now, recently we see the notes here this last week that Cohen now plans to sue Trump. Now, we know that Stormy Daniels tried to sue Trump. We know that whole thing was a fix, and in fact the judge ruled that Stormy Daniels has to reimburse Trump all the legal expenses that him and his team had to incur by going through that fraudulent Stormy Daniels claims. Now, when you think back to Stormy Daniels, remember this is about the same time that this lawyer Michael Avenatti got involved in all of this. Avenatti, also a bad guy, a bad player, playing a role in this whole scheme, and is corrupt part of the deep state. Avenatti now came out recently as well that he's been exposed. We know that Paul Manafort is a plant, another bad guy, and the news and the rumors all came out when he got his sentencing, his little 47 or 48 month sentencing, that everyone was up in arms saying he should be going to jail for life for treason, and then what a bad guy he is. That's also more and more distraction. And later he was sentenced, I think, after that to 48 additional months. So he'll be going to jail. Anyway, Trump could care less, as he's been exposed then as a fraud. Last notes here, we know that Nellie Orr, now CIA, Q Anon, told us that 2 months ago. And now that just came out in the news that she is connected as she's connected to Central Intelligence. Now, what we've got there is Bruce Orr, her husband, working with the DOJ, the wife Nellie working with the CIA. You get round and round it goes. And it's very interesting how all this is tied together between the lies, the corruption, and the mainstream media is basically helping to propagate this propaganda and push this out. And what we need to do is help educate the public to let them know what's really going on behind the scenes. And so the sooner we get this Mueller investigation completed, out, and wrapped up for the fraud that it was and the taxpayers' funding and the money that all of this took, and the headline news every single day, the Mueller investigation. And the crock that it is now done. We just need to get this done, out, over the, tie the ribbon in it, put it away, because this is done. Now what you'll see next, I think, is the D class coming from the FISA. The FISC court, the FISC court, the FISA applications, the FISA warrants, and all those lies. The NSA, once again, now the good guys that have everything, they've collected everything there is. So when people start getting indicted, the federal indictments start getting, those sealed indictments start getting released and unsealed. Indictments take place, people go to jail, people go to the juries, these military tribunals, whatever's going to happen when these mass arrests start taking place. It's going to include these high up officials. And so those waiting for these mass arrests to take place and sending the bad guys or the deep state down to Gitmo, down to Cuba, if Trump starts making mass arrests just willy-nilly, the general public is going to look at him and label him as a dictator gone rogue, and he's just doing this on his own. He knows that's what he's going to face, and so he's got to do this legally, appropriately, collect the evidence so these people can be put away legitimately. It all needs to be done legitimately. It cannot be done half-assed, and so that's why he's got Sessions playing his role, Whitaker coming in as the acting person for a while, Barr coming in. Barr, once again, bad guy, deep state, decades and decades ago, and even recently. He could be bad to this day. But it appears like Gina Haspel, who at one point was a bad guy, Gina Haspel now is turned working for good, considered a white hat. At that presidential State of the Union address, if you look and see what Gina Haspel was wearing, Director of Central Intelligence, the director was wearing a white top that had images of white hats. Little images of white hats all through her outfit. And I think that was very telling, the fact that she wore that to let everyone know that she is, in fact, working for the good, helping to corrupt and clean up the CIA, which I do believe Donald Trump has plans on dismantling as part of all this. Once it's all done, the CIA will no longer further to exist, is what I believe, my personal opinion. He's going to dismantle the CIA, because that corruption goes way back to its inception in 1947, I think is when it was the inception. That's been corrupt to the core. Now, Donald Trump and his team is also going to, I think, revamp the entire FBI, because that's all rotten to the core as well. I don't think that they can dismantle that and shut that down, but it'll be cleansed from the bottom up. So anyway, that's the overall view here from the top looking down, and what to look out for when you see the news, what to look for when you see these in the future with it's going to be coming up here the next couple of days. I think the deadline the QAnon has mentioned is March 19th here. Today's the 17th, so in the next 48 hours, look for big things happening. Hopefully with the D class, the FISA D class, the FISC D class, is going to bring down the likes of Rod Rosenstein, Comey, McCabe, the corrupt Department of Justice, the FBI that relates underneath the DOJ, underneath that umbrella, and the corruption that resides with all these FISA court judges, leading all the way up to Supreme Court. And the head of all that, the FISA court judges who signed off on these bogus warrants for surveillance, leads up to Supreme Court Justice John Roberts himself. Once again, please leave your comments below, and I'd like to hear some questions and comments on your thoughts on this type of thing. Also, be on the lookout here. The next couple of days should be quite interesting in the news. Thanks for listening.
Well, not only did they spread fake news with the dossier, the idea that the election was stolen, they didn't just spread it, okay, through destabilizing the presidency and they won Pulitzers for it. Go back, grab the person by the hair who's awarding the Pulitzer for the Russia story and say, "You're an asshole!" All right, before we move on to life
Already
advice.
Disturbed.
Question of the day. Now that Mueller's determined there has been no collusion, do you think that President Trump has a much stronger chance of winning re-election in 2020? What do you think the Democrats have left to campaign on? Let me know below and what your takeaways have been. I'm going to give you, it's
so incredible.
Here are the top takeaways, because it's been tough. It's tough to piecemeal the news sometimes with this. So takeaways from the report. Let's give you some context. The Mueller investigation finally concluded. 2 years, 25 to 50 million taxpayer dollars, depending on who you ask. It's really just a rounding error at that point.
Span of numbers.
So
This could be here, it could be here.
Here are the top takeaways from the report, in my opinion. Number one, obviously, there's been no collusion. Even mainstream leftist news outlets like MSNBC have finally been forced, and it hurts so you can see this through their face. They have to admit the truth.
And Robert Mueller has weighed in and said that was not tacit. There was no coordination or conspiracy.
So this vindicates the president on collusion?
It does. So it would vindicate him on collusion. You have to
The pain.
Yeah!
The pain.
She looked like that one Muppet Baby when it gets smashed by the other Muppet Baby with a frying pan. Just I have to be up here. So not a single charge related to the election, Russia collusion. Anyway, full stop. Okay, it's important to, by the way, something else that people have forgotten. This is the same result as 2 other already finished investigations, the Senate and House Intelligence Committees. Okay, so now 3 investigations, $25 to $50 million, depending on who you ask later. Nothing. Nothing. And I know the left is going to respond. This is what you see on media. They're going, well, what about Manafort? Well, okay, sure, Manafort's an ass.
Yeah.
But that doesn't connect Trump to colluding with Russia. The investigation, this is what's important here. The investigation was not to find out if Trump was a bad guy, potentially. It wasn't to find out if some of his people worked in the campaign, if they did some crappy things.